Dr. Emily Carter felt her stomach drop as the transport shuttle touched down on Research Station Omega-7. The metal floors were so clean they reflected the harsh white lights above, making everything look cold and unfriendly. She had traveled 3 weeks through deep space to get here, and now she was finally face to face with what everyone called a suicide mission. The Galactic Research Council had a reputation for giving humans the jobs nobody else wanted. They saw Earth's people as expendable test subjects, useful for dangerous work that more civilized species wouldn't touch. Emily knew this, but she had volunteered anyway. Back on Earth, her younger brother was dying from a rare disease that only alien medical technology could cure. The payment for this job would cover his treatment. Director Voss was waiting for her at the airlock. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with green scaly skin and eyes like frozen amber. When he smiled, Emily could see rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. Most humans found the reptilian aliens intimidating, but Emily had grown up in the rougher parts of Manchester, where intimidation was just another Tuesday. "So, they sent us another human," Voss said, his voice dripping with fake politeness. "How refreshing." The last 3 barely made it past the first night before the Shadow Claw tore them apart. Emily kept her face neutral as she signed the electronic clipboard he handed her. She had read the reports during her journey. 17 researchers dead in 12 months. All of them experienced xenobiologists with advanced degrees and years of fieldwork. The alien scientists had stopped volunteering for this assignment completely. "What exactly am I supposed to be studying?" Emily asked, shouldering her heavy equipment bag. Voss laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The creature comes from Prime, one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Everything there evolved to kill everything else. The Shadow Claw sits at the top of the food chain, 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor harder than most metals. Claws that can cut through steel doors, and unfortunately for you, it's smart enough to plan its attacks." They walked through corridors lined with observation windows. Behind the reinforced glass, Emily could see various alien creatures in containment cells. Most paced nervously or cowered in corners. The station felt more like a prison than a research facility. "The interesting part," Voss continued, "is that it seems to enjoy killing researchers. Not for food, mind you. It appears to take pleasure in the hunt. Very few species show that kind of calculated cruelty." Emily stopped walking. "You're talking about it like it's some mindless monster. If it's intelligent enough to plan attacks and show emotional responses, shouldn't we be treating it differently?" Voss turned to face her, his cold eyes narrowing. "Dr. Carter, I hope you're not developing misguided sympathy before you've even seen the beast. That kind of thinking got Dr. Williams killed last month. He thought he could reason with it right up until it separated his head from his shoulders." The director led her to an elevator that descended deep into the station's lower levels. The walls here were thicker, designed to contain things that conventional barriers couldn't hold. Emily could hear strange sounds echoing through the metal. Corridors scratching, growling, and something that almost sounded like crying. "Your job is simple," Voss explained as they reached the bottom level. "Observe the creature's behavior patterns. Try to understand how it thinks and hunts. Figure out what makes it so deadly. The containment chamber has full life support and monitoring equipment. We'll watch everything from the observation deck above." Emily looked through the reinforced window into the chamber below. It was a stark white cube, 30 feet on each side, with cameras mounted in every corner. In the center, something large and dark was chained to the floor. From this angle, she could only see a hunched shape covered in what looked like black armor plating. "The chains are made from compressed titanium alloy," Voss noted. "They should hold it, but don't get too close. The creature has surprising reach, and those claws move faster than human reflexes can react." Emily studied the viewing angles and equipment placement. Everything was designed to keep maximum distance between researcher and subject. How am I supposed to conduct meaningful behavioral analysis from across the room? Previous researchers managed just fine, Voss replied. Of course, they're all dead now, but they gathered useful data before their unfortunate endings. The casual way he discussed human deaths made Emily's jaw clench. She had dealt with people like Voss her entire life, bullies who saw others as disposable tools. The difference was that this time, the stakes were literally life and death. When do I start? Emily asked. Voss checked his chronometer. The chamber will be prepared in 1 hour. I suggest you use that time to write any final messages to family back on Earth. We'll make sure they're delivered along with your research notes. Emily Carter had never backed down from a fight in her life, and she wasn't about to start now. The heavy airlock door sealed behind Emily with a final, echoing clang. She stood alone in the containment chamber, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The room was blindingly white under the harsh fluorescent lights, making everything feel like some kind of medical operating theater. The walls were smooth metal with no windows or decorations, just cold efficiency designed to contain something deadly. Emily had spent the past hour reading every report about the Shadowclaw, trying to prepare herself for what she might face. The descriptions painted a picture of a creature that killed for sport, something that enjoyed watching the fear in its victim's eyes before striking. She had expected to find a monster pacing back and forth, snarling and testing the strength of its chains. Instead, she found something that broke her heart. The Shadowclaw was curled up in the far corner of the chamber, as far from the center as its restraints would allow. Its massive body was covered in plates of natural armor that looked like black glass, each piece fitting perfectly with the others like an insect's shell. But instead of standing tall and threatening, the creature was hunched over with its head tucked against its chest. Its breathing was shallow and irregular, like someone who had been crying for hours. Emily set her equipment bag down slowly, making sure not to create any sudden noises. She had worked with traumatized animals back on Earth, and she recognized the signs of a creature that had been pushed past its breaking point. This wasn't the behavior of a confident predator. This was someone who had given up hope. "Hello there," she said in the gentlest voice she could manage. The words echoed in the empty chamber, seeming impossibly loud in the silence. The Shadowclaw's head snapped up immediately, amber eyes locking onto her face. Emily had expected to see hunger or rage, but instead, she saw something that made her stomach twist with sympathy. Those eyes held intelligence, yes, but also deep exhaustion and a kind of desperate wariness that reminded her of abused children she had worked with during her university internship at a Manchester shelter. Up in the observation deck, she could hear Director Voss's voice crackling through the speakers. "Dr. Carter, maintain your distance and begin standard observation protocols immediately." Emily ignored him completely. She pulled out her meal pack and opened it slowly, making sure the creature could see exactly what she was doing. The food was standard military rations. Nothing fancy, but it was warm and smelled like real meat. She divided the portion in half, keeping one piece for herself and sliding the other across the smooth floor toward the Shadowclaw. "You look hungry," she said, settling down cross-legged on the floor. "When's the last time someone offered you a decent meal, instead of just throwing nutrition pellets at you?" The creature stared at the food for a long time, then looked back at her face. Emily could practically see the thoughts racing behind those amber eyes. Was this a trick? Was she trying to poison it? Why wasn't she screaming or running away, like all the others? Minutes passed in complete silence. Emily began eating her own portion slowly, never breaking eye contact with the Shadowclaw. She had learned long ago that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply exist in the same space as someone who expected you to hurt them. Finally, moving with surprising delicacy for something so large, the Shadowclaw reached out with one clawed hand and pulled the food closer. It sniffed carefully, then took a small bite. Emily watched as its eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since she had entered the chamber, its rigid posture relaxed just a fraction. "Good?" Emily asked, with a small smile. "I know it's not much, but it's better than whatever they've been feeding you." In the observation deck above, Director Voss was having a heated conversation with his assistants. Emily could hear fragments through the speakers before someone remembered to mute the microphone. Words like unprecedented behavior and completely against protocol drifted down to her. The Shadowclaw finished its meal and looked at Emily expectantly. She realized it was waiting for her to do something, probably something violent based on its past experiences with researchers. When she simply continued sitting there peacefully, the creature made a sound she hadn't expected. It was soft and questioning, almost like a bird's chirp, but deeper and more complex. "Are you trying to talk to me?" Emily asked, leaning forward slightly. The Shadowclaw tilted its head, studying her with what looked like genuine curiosity rather than predatory calculation. Emily had the strangest feeling that she was missing something important. All the reports described this creature as a mindless killing machine, but everything she was seeing suggested the exact opposite. The Shadowclaw was clearly intelligent, possibly more so than most of the alien species she had encountered. Its reactions were thoughtful and measured, not the random violence of a beast. Something was very wrong with the official story, and Emily intended to find out what. By the third morning, Emily had settled into a rhythm that felt more natural than anything she had experienced since leaving Earth. She would enter the containment chamber at dawn, share breakfast with the creature she had started thinking of as Hunter, and spend the day simply existing in the same space. It was nothing like the aggressive observation protocols Director Voss had outlined, but Emily trusted her instincts more than his outdated research methods. The transformation in Hunter was remarkable. On that first day, the creature had been curled up like a wounded animal, flinching at every sound and keeping its massive form pressed against the far wall. Now, Hunter would actually look forward to Emily's arrival, straightening up when the airlock opened and making soft rumbling sounds that reminded Emily of a cat's purr. Though much deeper and more complex, Emily had brought her tablet loaded with music from Earth. Everything from classical symphonies to folk songs her grandmother used to sing. She discovered that Hunter particularly enjoyed the gentler melodies, tilting its head and moving slightly to the rhythm. When she played anything too harsh or aggressive, Hunter would make a soft, whining sound and move away, which told Emily everything she needed to know about how this creature had been treated before. "You like the quiet songs, don't you?" Emily said on the morning of the fourth day, scrolling through her playlist. "My brother always preferred the loud rock music, but I was more like you. Give me something peaceful any day." Hunter responded with a series of clicks and chirps that were becoming more frequent and elaborate each day. Emily had started to recognize patterns in the sounds, almost like Hunter was developing a way to communicate specifically with her. The creature would make different noises when it was hungry, content, curious, or trying to get her attention. "You're definitely trying to talk to me," Emily said, setting down her breakfast and moving closer than any previous researcher had dared. She was now sitting only about 8 feet away from Hunter, close enough to see the individual plates of armor and the way the creature's amber eyes tracked her every movement with keen intelligence. Hunter made a complex series of sounds that lasted almost 30 seconds, combining clicks, whistles, and what sounded like actual syllables. Emily quickly activated the translation software on her tablet, hoping it might pick up something useful. The program had been loaded with every known language from Grimhold Prime and the surrounding systems, but as the sounds processed, the screen showed no matches. "That's strange," Emily muttered, checking the settings. "Either you're speaking a completely unknown language, or ... She paused, looking up at Hunter with new understanding. "Or maybe you're not from Grimhold Prime at all." Before Hunter could respond, the station's emergency alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber, as a computerized voice announced a critical system failure. Emily looked up at the ventilation grates, just as yellowish gas began pouring into the room. "Oh no," she whispered, recognizing the color from her safety briefings. It was industrial coolant, highly toxic to most life forms, and deadly to humans, in even small amounts. Her tablet showed that the emergency air filtration system had failed, and the regular ventilation had been contaminated by a leak in the lower engineering sections. Emily scrambled toward the emergency oxygen masks that should have been mounted on the walls, but found empty brackets where life support equipment should have been. The station's safety protocols were clearly not designed with human researchers in mind. She could already feel her throat burning as the toxic fumes spread through the chamber. That's when Hunter did something that changed everything, moving faster than Emily had ever seen. The massive creature lunged forward and wrapped its arms around her, pulling her against its armored chest. Instead of the violent attack everyone had expected for days, Hunter was protecting her, using its own body as a shield against the poisonous gas. Emily could feel the creature's armor plates sealing together more tightly, creating an almost airtight barrier around her. Hunter's amber eyes looked down at her with unmistakable concern as the toxic fumes washed over its back and shoulders. The creature's natural armor was designed to protect against the harsh environment of its homeworld, whatever that might be, and it was now using that protection to save Emily's life. In the observation deck above, Director Voss stood frozen in shock. His assistants were frantically working to activate the emergency ventilation systems while calling for hazmat teams. But Voss couldn't take his eyes off the scene below. "That's impossible," he whispered, his reptilian features twisted in confusion. The creature should have used this opportunity to kill her. Every behavioral model predicted it would take advantage of her weakness. The emergency systems finally kicked in, powerful fans sucking the toxic gas out of the chamber and replacing it with clean air. Hunter held Emily for several more minutes, only releasing her when the danger had completely passed. As Emily caught her breath, she looked up at the creature that had just saved her life, seeing something in those amber eyes that she was sure no previous researcher had ever bothered to look for. Hunter wasn't a monster at all. Hunter was someone who understood what it meant to care about another living being, even at the cost of personal safety. Emily realized she wasn't just studying an alien predator anymore. She was getting to know a friend. Emily knelt beside Hunter, carefully applying the medical gel she had finally convinced the station to provide. The chemical burns from the toxic gas leak covered patches of the creature's back and shoulders where the armor plating hadn't fully sealed. Each time she touched a particularly painful spot, Hunter would make a soft whimpering sound that reminded Emily of an injured dog trying to be brave. "I'm so sorry this happened to you," Emily murmured, working as gently as possible. "You saved my life, and this is what you got for it." Her tablet sat nearby, still running the translation program she had been working on for days. The software had been slowly learning Hunter's language patterns, building a database of sounds and meanings. Emily had noticed that Hunter's vocalizations were far more complex than any animal communication she had studied, with grammar structures and emotional nuances that suggested a highly developed language. Suddenly, the tablet chimed with a successful translation. Emily glanced at the screen and saw words that made her heart skip a beat. Double quotes, "Please. Don't hurt me anymore. I just want to go home to my children." Emily's hands froze in the middle of applying the healing gel. She stared at the screen, then at Hunter, then back at the screen again. "What did you just say?" Hunter made the same series of sounds again, and the translation appeared immediately. "I miss my little ones. Are they still alive? Do they wonder where their father went?" The medical supplies slipped from Emily's trembling fingers. Father. Hunter was talking about being a father to children who were waiting for him to come home. This wasn't some mindless predator from a death world. This was a parent who had been torn away from his family. "Oh my God," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. What have they done to you? More translations began flowing across the screen as Hunter continued speaking, apparently relieved that someone could finally understand him. Emily learned that Hunter's real name was something that translated roughly to Teacher of the Young. Once, on his homeworld, he had been what humans might call a university professor, specializing in something equivalent to child development and education. The council had captured him during what they called a specimen collection raid on his home settlement. Hunter had been trying to protect a group of youngsters when the soldiers stunned him and dragged him away. He had no idea if any of the children had survived the attack, including his own offspring. "They told us you were a killer," Emily said, tears running down her cheeks as she continued treating his burns. "Every report said you were a monster who enjoyed hurting people." Hunter's amber eyes met hers, and through the translator came words that shattered Emily's heart. "I became what they wanted me to become. When they hurt me every day, when they sent person after person to prod me and shock me and take pieces of me for their tests, I learned to fight back. I learned to hate, until you showed me kindness. You reminded me who I was before the pain." Emily's mind raced as she processed what she was hearing. The previous researchers hadn't been killed by a natural predator. They had been killed by a tortured being who had been driven to violence through months of systematic abuse. The council had created the very monster they claimed to be studying. "How long have you been here?" Emily asked. 17 cycles of the station's lights," Hunter replied. "They took me when the flowers were blooming on my world. They should be blooming again soon. My children loved to play in the flower fields." 17 months. Hunter had been held in this chamber, experimented on and tortured for over a year. Emily thought about her own father, how frantic she would be if he simply disappeared one day. Hunter's children had probably given up hope of ever seeing their father again. Emily stood up abruptly, her grief transforming into white-hot anger. She marched to the communication panel on the wall and slammed the call button. "Director Voss, I need to speak with the Galactic Research Council immediately. There's been a massive mistake." Voss's voice crackled through the speaker, sounding annoyed at the interruption. "Dr. Carter, you're supposed to be conducting behavioral observations, not making demands. Submit your findings through proper channels. The findings are that you've been torturing an innocent being for over a year," Emily shouted. "Hunter isn't a predator from Grimhold Prime. He's a teacher and a father who was kidnapped from his family. Every death in this chamber was the result of systematic abuse, not natural aggression." There was a long silence before Voss responded, his voice colder than Emily had ever heard it. "Dr. Carter, you've clearly developed an unhealthy emotional attachment to the specimen. This kind of anthropomorphization is exactly why humans make poor researchers." "Specimen." Emily's voice rose to a shout. "His name is Teacher of the Young. Ones, he has children waiting for him at home, and you've been calling him a specimen. Dr. Carter, return to your quarters immediately. We're terminating this experiment. The creature has clearly become too unpredictable for further study." Emily's blood turned to ice. She knew what terminating the experiment meant in council terminology. They were going to kill Hunter to cover up what they had done. "Over my dead body," Emily said quietly into the communicator. "That can be arranged," Voss replied. The communication channel went dead, leaving Emily alone in the chamber with Hunter, who was looking at her with an expression of resigned understanding. He had heard this conversation before, Emily realized. He knew what was coming. But Emily Carter had never backed down from a fight in her life, and she wasn't about to let them murder the gentlest soul she had ever met. "Like hell you are," Emily snarled into the communicator, her Manchester accent coming through thick and fierce. The polite, professional scientist was gone, replaced by the scrappy girl who had grown up fighting for everything she had ever earned. Emily had spent her childhood on the rough streets of Manchester, where backing down meant getting beaten down. She had worked 3 jobs to put herself through university, while her professors told her she wasn't smart enough for advanced xenobiology. She had volunteered for this suicide mission when every other researcher was too scared to even consider it. The Galactic Research Council had made one massive mistake in their calculations about human behavior. They had no idea what a human being would do to protect someone they loved. "Hunter," Emily said, turning to face her friend. "Your people. What did they do before the council found them?" Through the translator, Hunter's response came clearly. "We were builders and healers. My specialty was biotechnology, working with living systems to create harmony between different species." "Why do you ask?" Emily looked around the containment chamber with new eyes, seeing possibilities instead of limitations. "Because we're about to give these bastards the biggest surprise of their lives. Can you help me modify the systems in here?" What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. Hunter's species, it turned out, had developed biotechnology that was centuries ahead of anything the Council had ever seen. They could manipulate organic and synthetic systems at the molecular level, basically rewriting the rules of how technology worked. Combined with Emily's human talent for creative problem-solving, and her complete refusal to accept the word impossible, they turned the sterile containment chamber into something that would have impressed the galaxy's best engineers. Working together, they modified the chamber's life support systems to be completely They altered the communication arrays to boost outgoing signals while blocking incoming attempts to override their controls. Most importantly, they reinforced the chamber's defenses until it became literally impregnable. The Council's own technology, designed to keep Hunter trapped, was now protecting both of them from any rescue attempts. But Emily's real weapon wasn't the modified defenses or the impressive engineering. Her most powerful tool was sitting right there on her tablet, which had been faithfully recording everything for her research logs since the moment she entered the chamber. Every conversation with Director Voss, every moment of Hunter's pain and fear when she first met him, every gentle interaction as trust built between them, every revelation about the Council's torture methods and Hunter's true identity as a loving father and respected teacher. The tablet had captured it all in perfect detail. Emily activated the chamber's communication system and began broadcasting on every frequency she could access. "This is Dr. Emily Carter, calling from Research Station Omega-7. I am transmitting evidence of war crimes committed by the Galactic Research Council's Research Division. You need to see what they've done." She uploaded everything. The footage of Hunter cowering in the corner, traumatized and broken. The translations revealing his true identity and his desperate pleas to go home to his children. The moment he saved her life by shielding her from toxic gas, proving beyond any doubt that he was no monster. The healing conversations that showed the gentle intelligence behind those amber eyes. The response was immediate and explosive. Within hours, the recordings were being shared across every communication network in the galaxy. Species after species watched in horror as the truth came out. They saw a young human woman risking everything to protect a creature that had been demonized and abused by the very organization that claimed to represent galactic civilization. The footage of Emily simply sharing meals with Hunter, speaking to him with kindness and respect, treating him like the person he was, rather than the monster they claimed he was, struck something deep in the hearts of viewers across dozens of worlds. Here was proof that connection and understanding could triumph over fear and prejudice. If someone was brave enough to try, within days, protests erupted on every council member world. Citizens demanded answers about how many other specimens were really innocent beings who had been tortured and killed for research. The hashtag #JusticeForTeacher trended on every social media platform in the galaxy, referring to Hunter's real profession by the time rescue ships arrived at the station. The Galactic Research Council was facing the largest civil rights movement in recorded galactic history. Humans, who had always been seen as the galaxy's underdogs, were leading the charge with their stubborn refusal to accept that systematic cruelty was just how things were done. Director Voss and his research team were arrested on war crimes charges. Hunter became the first non-council species to address the Galactic Senate, speaking eloquently about the need for rights and protections for all sentient beings. His testimony, delivered in his own language, with translation provided, brought many senators to tears. Emily was awarded the Galactic Medal of Honor, though she insisted during her acceptance speech that Hunter deserved the real credit for teaching her what courage looked like. "I just treated him like a person," she told the packed auditorium. "I shared my food, played him some music, and listened when he tried to talk to me. Apparently, that was revolutionary enough to change everything." The council had expected Emily Carter to die quickly and quietly, adding one more name to their list of failed researchers. Instead, she had accidentally started a revolution with nothing more than shared meals, gentle conversation, and basic human decency. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can give someone isn't a weapon. It's hope, kindness, and the simple recognition that they matter. Emily had learned that growing up on the streets of Manchester, and she had just taught it to the entire galaxy.